Welcome back to Veterans Forum, a program by veterans, about veterans, and for veterans and their families. I'm your co-host, Bob West, with Ray Chattery and Jerry Devlin. Our goal is to provide important information to you and your families about legislation, benefits, support, and activities by interviewing leaders in our community. Jerry, who do we have with us tonight?
Bob, we're very honored to have with us Delegate Geraldine Valentino-Smith, who just completed her first 90-day session in Annapolis and made a very nice name for herself. And as you know, during the campaign, she enjoyed very strong political support from the veterans community. And during this, her first session in Annapolis, became a very eloquent and hardworking and a legislator who produced results for veterans. Geraldine is, of course, she's lived all her life here in Bowie. She's a graduate of the class of '82 at Bowie High School. Her husband, P.J. Smith, was a graduate of '80, so she has deep roots. And she brings an interesting and outstanding professional background. She's a graduate of the Catholic University School of Nursing, and then also the Catholic University Law School. So she's both a nurse and an attorney, and she had represented various clients in Annapolis for many years. And so she came to Annapolis, started out running, and she is a member of the Judiciary Committee, and everything I hear from the judicial community is excellent, and she certainly has earned in a year a very, very strong amount of respect from everybody who's dealt with her. We're happy to have her with us.
Thank you, Judge Devlin.
Well, welcome back, Geraldine. I think you're our first guest that's actually come back for the second time, so I guess we're doing something right.
I think Doug Peters was here.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
Senator Peters is another one of our alumni.
Right.
So this is your first year. I'm sure it was exciting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience, and then we'll get into, of course, some veterans legislation.
All right, well, great. It is great to be back with you three gentlemen in a constituency which you know I hold very dear in my heart. It was the 428th General Assembly session for the state of Maryland, and it was, again, my first. And I decided when you no longer have chills walking up the steps of the State House is when it's time to go. So I can affirm for you I continued to have chills every day that I went in there with the privilege of representing the good people of the district. As the judge said, I was a member of the House Judiciary Committee, so we had a very intense session with a lot of very interesting issues. And I also had the opportunity with Senator Peters, who is just an ardent supporter of the veterans, to sponsor 2 veteran bills that successfully passed, and looking forward to 3 more sessions.
Well, that's great. So let's get started. Why don't you tell us about the bills that you were a sponsor of?
Well, I think the first and the best hearing that I can imagine that I will have for some time was a hearing in which Judge Devlin sat to my right, Secretary Choi sat to my left, and Secretary Sharfstein of the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene sat to his left, and we testified without opposition to a bill that would allow the continuation of the coordination of behavioral mental health benefits. The Lieutenant Governor was a supporter of the bill, and it passed out of the committee, and it ran in the Senate into a procedural problem where some senators decided to maybe toy with it or play with it. And I must tell you, the veterans responded with just extreme vigor when we asked them to, with emails, and just caused that senator to release the bill, and it passed. The second bill was to allow the, you're going to help me, Adjutant General to provide in his office information for military spouses. We're expecting a lot of relocation because of BRAC and anything near Fort Meade, and trying to offer a climate where military personnel feel comfortable and are enabled to come to Maryland and their spouses find a job. So it will be just a central location where they can find information out about reciprocal licensure, such as becoming a teacher or practicing medicine. And we're going to build upon that bill next session with trying to work on some tenure requirements for teachers. So it was a successful bill, and the second bill that I was able to pass for the veterans. So 2 bills in my first session for the veterans. Proud to be the sponsor. Next year, Senator Peters and I are going to work together, continue to work together on veterans bills, and work on the Veterans Courts bill, because it will be in my committee of jurisdiction in the House Judiciary Committee.
Now, the first bill you mentioned, how would that affect veterans?
the coordination, there's a current program that provides for the coordination of behavioral mental health benefits. And it also allows some of the local providers to participate in it so that there's an entire coordinated effort where there might not be services. And that was going to sunset. And almost like anything, when a law is going to sunset, there's always the opportunity to decide that, one, it either costs too much money, which in this environment is always a worry, or two, that there's no longer a need for it. So the veterans and the secretaries and the lieutenant governor and with Judge Devlin there, we really came to the table and said, look, this allows the coordination of important benefits for mental health issues, which many of our veterans returning can have, which extend themselves anywhere from post-traumatic stress syndrome to substance abuse. Okay.
And you're right. It's very important, especially now with the soldiers and Marines coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan with some of the problems that we're seeing now.
And if you don't have a coordinated effort, you know, things fall through the cracks. This ensures kind of a tight delivery of services.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned also, we had talked before, about some of these bills that appeared to be unfavorable if you went online to look at them, but actually were combined with some other legislation, so they actually passed.
Yes, and it looks like you had almost $950,000 worth of bond money for veterans projects.
And one of them was the McVet Center up in Baltimore.
Yes, that did pass, and that was for a $500,000 bond bill.
And what a lot of people don't maybe not know is McVet is held up as one of the prime examples in the country of how to help veterans, primarily who were on the street, and they bring them in through I think it's about a 4-year transition period, isn't it, Ray?
Yes.
And they watch them along the way, and they're held to rigorous standards, and if they don't follow the program, they're booted out. So, but they have a very high success ratio up there. And you're familiar with McVet, weren't you, Ray?
Yes.
And you've been up there to visit?
I've been up there to visit a couple of times. They have some. They'll get, I would say, residents to testify. One had a 2-year college, and they also help the other ones to get into education. They also have several female veterans up there, and of course they have separate housing and such like that. And it's just a very tremendous program. I'm glad to see that they are.
It's one of the good things we do. We had Red Fahey here, Maryland Veterans Cemetery. We have a lot of programs of veterans that really are national bell ringers,
right.
And those two are really outstanding. You know.
Along with Charlotte Hall.
Charlotte Hall is outstanding.
The people, they come to Maryland. So many places come to Maryland for McVet, Charlotte Hall, our cemetery program, since we're one of the only states that have 5 cemeteries. And it's in the way, as well as it's run with our Department of Veterans Affairs, what we can thank Governor Glendening for. Yeah. And it's just really good.
And I think the other thing, too, is we were talking about some of the other bills that passed. Charlotte Hall seems to be one of the important ones that also passed, because now gifts and grants can be sent directly there.
I'm starting to cough. But there was great confusion after a bill passed that allowed money to be put into a veterans fund. And so with Charlotte Hall, what they decided to do was say, let's clarify. If you just want to give directly to Charlotte Hall, you can.
Right.
And that's what happened with that bill.
Well, you were a co-sponsor of that. Johnny Wood from St. Mary's County was the principal sponsor, and Senator Dyson of St. Mary's. It's and by the way, you're going to have a developing issue on the new Charlotte Hall. They've always said the feds won't fund another Charlotte Hall until it's filled, and for years it kind of lagged. Now it's 92% filled, so there's going to be another veterans home somewhere in Maryland. The fight will be where, you know.
Right.
It always is.
Yeah,
and we will hope for Prince George's County. Or
Right.
We're probably not likely. Probably you're talking Western Maryland, Baltimore, or the Eastern Shore.
They're going to try to put it. One thing about Charlotte Hall is Louis Goldstein, Senator Conroy, Mr. Wineland were the 3 big guys, and it took him almost 10 years to get that off the ground down there. Well, they found Charlotte Hall because they closed the military school. They had the grounds, the state owned it, and they opened in 1985. And it's so far from Western Maryland that there's nobody west of Baltimore that's residents there. So they're going to try the next veterans home, which I served on the commission for 9 years. They're going to try to get it more centrally located so they can get the people from Western Maryland. They'll probably be in the Fort Detrick area, Frederick area, Baltimore, Hagerstown,
Western
more centrally
Maryland,
located.
They kind of feel like they're stepchildren. For example, most people from Western Maryland go for VA treatment at Kaiser, West Virginia, rather than any place in Maryland. So they really are. They have a case out there.
Right. The only consideration is the population. Prince George's County is #1. Anne Arundel, Baltimore City, Baltimore County is 2, 3. And the Western Maryland and Eastern Shore, they're sporadic. I mean, they're very, very small numbers.
80% of the people in the state live in the 5 big counties.
Right. So and that's where most of the veterans are. They're close to 500,000 veterans
When
now.
my daughter swam for Washington College, the coach was a graduate of Penn State. And she said, do you know that you can fit all the population of the Eastern Shore into the football stadium at Penn State? Which you can.
Now, another one of the bills that apparently was funded favorably had to do with the Morgan Mill facility. And that was House Bill 259.
That's $350,000 in grant money for that, and that was, again, from the delegates in Baltimore City. So they did well. I mean, Baltimore City got a total of $850,000 for the programming of veterans benefits there.
And then also for the support for the Maryland Veterans Memorial Museum.
$100,000.
And that's going to be in Charles County.
In Charles County.
Right.
So I think overall, in a year when there's always a threat that bond projects won't get funded or shouldn't be funded, I think it's very significant that the veterans were able to attain such a significant amount of bond money for capital improvements.
Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that always comes up here has to do with slots.
Yes.
And one other county was added to the slots bill last year, and it was approved. And we're still waiting for us over here on the Eastern Shore.
Western Shore.
Yes, I mean, there is no question that throughout the tone of the session that there was an underlying current for a push to say, let's not just make it the Eastern Shore. Let's allow the veterans on the other side of the bridge or the northern or western parts of Maryland to have that same benefit of 5 machines. And the 5 machines have proved so successful because not only have they generated money with a high net return, but they've also afforded the opportunity for charities. And in these hard economic times, we know the not-for-profit and the charities really end up hurting in a community. So it's a win-win in the minds of most people, except for the House leadership. And so at this point, I think we move forward with, as you are planning, an organized effort to decide to approach from the Lieutenant Governor to the House leadership to our county executive to see a full court press for that opportunity here.
See, the problem that I can see is how you feel personally is no place in politics. You have to serve your constituents. And the veterans groups, like, well, to give you an example, there's only 2 VFW post in Prince George in our district. There's only 1 DAV post in the state of Maryland. And now American Legion have more posts than all the other ones.
The VFW. That's statewide.
Well, the VFW has more,
yeah.
But overall the American Legion probably leads.
The Marine Corps League has 1.
The Marine Corps League has 1 in Baltimore. So like I said, it's we're not talking like there's going to be a post on every corner. I mean, they're sporadically, and a lot of the posts, like we have 4 veterans organizations meet at Bowie, at our DAV post.
Well, and I will tell you, when the bill adding Worcester County arrived on the House floor, there was chatter by various delegates standing up and taking the microphone and saying, take note that this is passing for Worcester, but next year we expect great contemplation for other geographic areas. What you're doing, though, is you end up in a situation, at least in Prince George's County, where you also have the local volunteer firefighters